it was, I'm not going to do that. So I sold it. So I'd be better off giving the $80,000 to somebody else, let them enjoy it. You know, my wife and I at one time had 5 homes. We have one home that we've had for 4 years. We've been in it one night. I let people use it just so they'll tell me whether it's burned down or not. I've done all of those things, and the thrill doesn't last very long. You can very quickly get very accustomed to it. Now, somebody that doesn't have any money will say, that's absurd, that's absurd. But the thing that lasts are the things where you see things grow, and where you plant a little seed and you get a tree, or you put some money in and to the school and you see something good come from that. I am one of these guys that, when in doubt, throw it out. I keep nothing. I mean, you can walk into my office, you can open any drawer, there's nothing in anything. I keep nothing. If you wrote me a letter, I would read it and throw it in the trash can. I don't collect anything like that. But the one thing I collect is the letters that I get from the students about scholarships. And the reason I keep them is because it is the best return on investment you can get. It doesn't have to come to me to be a good return. It just has to come to somebody to be a good return. So I sponsor a music department at Idaho State. And I think I give them $25,000 a semester. And I get 25 letters. And these people will say, you know, if it weren't for you, I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. So I say, you know, for $1,000, I may have created $1 million worth of satisfaction and joy. And there isn't any stock you can buy that'll give you $1 million return on a $1,000 investment. And that lasts forever. So that's very important.
Do you think that, that's really cool. That's really cool. It's one of the coolest things we've heard so far. Do you think that more people, I just wish more people would hear that message.
Why, let me ask you something. Why is it they don't understand it? Why isn't they don't understand it? I have friends, I have a guy who called me up, and I know he's worth $600 million. He said, I cannot believe you gave away your children's inheritance. I said, well, I don't know what children's inheritance as a possessive sort of thing means. It's not their money. It's my money. In the first place, I wouldn't give it to them because it's like giving them psychological cancer. They don't know what to do with it. But secondly, with $600 million, I mean, what do you do with that? It's just numbers on a page. What do you do with that? I mean, you take out your stock certificates and you walk around on your bare feet every night all over. I mean, does that give you a thrill? No. Well, what do you do with it? Why don't you take $10,000 of it and go over to the school and give it to some poor kid, you know, who's working his bottom off morning, noon, and night to go through a pre-med course? Why don't you do that? It's a good idea, but then they don't do it. Why don't they understand? That's the greatest mystery that I find. Why don't they understand? It'd give for their listen, the $10,000 isn't doing anything for them now. If it gave them a $50 thrill, it's more than the value of what they're getting out of the $10,000 now. They don't understand it. There's a lot of greedy people out there. Greedy people.
If we could just get them to be greedy about the feeling of the satisfaction, if you could transfer the greed for the toys to the greed for the letters from the students, the sort of the joy.
Yeah, my partner used to say, give it away with a warm hand. You know, don't give it away when the executor is reading the will and you're in the ground. There's no thrill to that. None at all. So what we really did, and we sat down and we figured out this is what we have. And this should be, it hadn't turned out that way necessarily, this should be our income stream, assuming that I live to be 75. And during that period of time, we're going to give away, let's say, 80% of it. We live well. You know, we live as well as anybody. but you can just have so many cars to drive. You know, I do have a railroad car, and I can hook it up to the back of a train, but I've been in it once since I bought it. But every year this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try to develop an income stream for somebody, for the schools, so that they can count on something every year. If you give a school $100,000, they say, that's fine, this is for this year, but what are we going to do next year? We can't go hire a professor and have him here for 20 years because you've given 1 year. So I've tried to do that. Now, it has its problems because my income has gone up and down. And there have been some times when I've said, you know, I'm having trouble making those payments. But they've always been made. Sometimes a little late, but they've always been made. And there's just such great satisfaction in that.
All right, so, okay, let me see how I frame it. My brother-in-law is one of those attorneys. He's a patent attorney, so he does fine. He's not super millionaire,
right,
but he does very well. They don't have kids, and he's done what you've said. He has every toy car,
yeah,
and he moves, and he's unhappy. He moves to a next job. I mean, it's this whole thing. How do we get that message to the income that doesn't have 600 million? What should they? Is there a way to target them, and sort of the students that are here that maybe plant seeds in the sense of, like, when you do get that money, or when you do start to feel like, I've bought all these toys?
It's really not when they get the money. That's not the important thing. The important thing is starting out and making them a part of the whole school system. Because it doesn't make any difference whether they send you $10 a month or $1,000 a month, at least from their standpoint. If they're not going to send you the $10, they're not going to send you the $1,000. If they're not going to send you the $1,000, they're not going to send you the $10. So it's just the concept of getting them to participate. And that has to start, I'm convinced, with the L1s.
Today.
I've given up. I have to tell you this in all honesty. She wouldn't agree with this, and because she has to keep kind of fighting the battle. But I've given up on the graduates of more than 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's just, it's not worth the time and the, at least my time and effort, of going out and mining that kind of money. So it has to be a cultural thing where they didn't just look at law school as, you know, law boot camp, and the day I'm leaving I'm finished, and they didn't do anything for me, and I paid my way, and there wasn't any fun to it, didn't enjoy it. So why should I participate in it? And if you can get these students to understand that those of us who came ahead have subsidized their education so that it'll be easier for them to support the ones that are behind them, because they're not paying debt all the time, then I think that's where it is. But I think it's a 10-year workout. At first I wasn't patient about that. You know, I don't understand why this isn't happening faster. But it's not going to happen any faster. And I think we push as hard, and I think Vicki does a tremendous job. Certainly, Tony does a great job. Everybody here does a great job of making the contact and making the connection between the students and the law school.
So if you had you could wave your magic wand and have the students participate as much as possible, what would you have them doing in the first 5 years out of law school? The classes that are going to just be seeing this, what would you want them to be doing when they got out, on a practical level?
I mean, as far as participating in it?
Participating financially,
yeah. Well,
whatever.
Here's what I told the 3Ls last year. I said, look, I want you to send us $100 a year for 10 years. You're building your practice. I don't want to interfere with that. You're building your family. I don't want to take anything away from your family. But if you send us $100 a year, at least you'll be thinking about it. And then I think you ought to keep in contact with the school. This is a really fine faculty. And from what I've seen of them, they're very open and friendly. And certainly you must have had a relationship with one of those professors that was special to you. Now, when I was here, and it was boot camp type at that time, Jim Lenore was a tax professor. And he and I remained friends for 20 years, till he died. And I just worshiped the man. You know, I finally, when I had a few bucks the first time, I established some scholarships in his name. And you know, if the students would call once in a while and just say, how are you? You know, geez, or I got a case, you know, and let me tell you what it's about. You know, you call the real estate professor and you say, let me tell you, you know, I thought that stuff about Blackacre was a bunch of foolishness. But you know, I actually got a Blackacre case, right? And I'd really like to tell you what happened. And they're going to be fascinated.
So you can call them not just with problems, but just to check in and say hello.
Absolutely. They're interested in your success. Every professor here has an emotional and financial interest in every student's success, because every professor here could be making more money someplace else. So they have decided, I mean, let's say that the average salary that they could make is $150,000 and they're making $100,000. So they're investing $50,000 of their own valuable time in teaching. And they'd like to know what happened to that $50,000. So then Harry calls and says, boy, you know, that thing you taught me about, whatever it was, I really put it to good use, yada, yada, yada. The professor's going to be delighted. He's invested in that person. And that connection ought to be continued. I'm not so sure also that the professors haven't made a little bit of a mistake in that if I were involved with people, I would tell them that I really would like for you to keep in touch. If I were doing seminars in the third year, where you've got 8 or 10 people in it, I would find out what they're going to do. I don't know whether they do or they don't. But I would find out, you know, you were really good in my class, and I know you're interested in the same things that I'm interested in. Why don't you keep in touch? Just drop me a note every 6 months.
They don't, yeah, I came from a graduate program where you slowly become a colleague with your advisor, and there's that transition. It seems like that doesn't happen as much with a law school, that you stay a student and you don't become a colleague.
Yeah, but see, that should happen. That should happen more.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, I don't know what the students call the professors, but I have in my company, I don't let anybody call me Mr. Nobody. And the reason I do that is I don't want any distance, any more distance than is necessary between me and my employees. I don't ever want my employees to change what they're talking about if I walk through the room. If I walk into my newsroom, I know that people don't talk news all the time. They talk about what they did last night. I don't want them to change what they're talking about because I walk through. I want that close relationship so that they can come talk to me, and they do. I think they do because I'm a lawyer also that comes, oh my God, let me tell you about my problems, and I listen to this crap all the time. But see, if I were teaching the course, I would say to every student, I want you to call me by my first name. And then I would say, you know, if you got a problem, let me know. And when you get out, I'd really like to know what happened to you. And so you don't need to call me up and say, hello, Professor Jones. Is it all right now if I call you Bill? You can call up and say, you know, Bill, let me tell you what I'm doing. And you know, one of the other nice things about this place is that there have been a couple of times recently, and I don't think it's because I've given the money to the school, where I've had an issue come up, and we just didn't know what law firm to call because it was something in, let's say, some securities question, and we've never dealt in that, and I don't even remember why it came up. But I've called here, and even during the summer, I've said, you know, I have this problem. I don't even know what the kind of a problem it is. It's been analyzed for me, and 20 minutes later, I'll get a phone call back. Jim, what's your problem? And I explain it. Oh, that's a securities case, and I'm not the expert. You may have thought I was the expert, but there's another one that knows more, and they participated. So I can't think that they would treat me any differently from what they would treat the student. Those things should be kept up. Those relationships should be developed.
And if they do that, then if they're connected to their real estate professor, they may want to help with real estate.
Of course.
That it just makes it stronger.
Of course. Yeah. And so then you've got Mike, you know, who says his library isn't adequate, and he needs more real estate books.
Right.
Right? Then you have somebody that the professor can say, well, you know, I was talking to Harry Jones the other day, and he loves real estate, and he loves this place, and Why don't you call him up and see if he wouldn't, he's not going to contribute money, let's say, directly, because he didn't believe in that. But he'd love it if we had, you know, Agler on real estate. He was one of my professors here. See, that's the way you make those connections. You make everybody buy in to the project.
So then then how does that all, how do you get the message from the student that's calling the professors to the people who need it, to the money? I mean, how do you keep that all coordinated? Because it seems like it could all kind of get disconnected.
Well, it can, but after a while, you know, once you've developed a methodology for it, it works. It really works. And it would.
That's really, I think students will be really interested to see all of that, because I don't think that's something that most students think about. I mean, in terms of how it all, you know, that part of it.
So I think that the informality, I really believe in that. A lot of people don't. You know, John Sexton at NYU. Here's a huge school. You walk down the hall and the student, hey John, how are you doing? You know, I saw the Knicks got beat, and John Sexton's a lunatic about basketball and baseball. I see the Knicks got beat last night, you know, and so he'll stop and talk to them about it. That really is a help. And then he's interested in their careers. That's very, very important.
Well, that's good. Sorry, got muddled at the end.
That's all right.
All right. Well, let's do. Can we do the very last question?
I thought that was, but whatever you say.
It's an easy question.
Okay.
We've asked this of everyone, and you can decide whatever. What are one or some of your happiest moments practicing law, or in business? But you can do either one. You can do happy. It's just a happy moment. What is a happy moment for you? You've talked about it some already, but you might have more.
Gosh, you know, I really had a lot that I was very pleased about. I had a client that had a tax problem, and it started in 1971. We started dealing with the Internal Revenue Service, and we signed the closing documents in 1989. It took 18 years. We went through IRS agents. You know, I think they had their grandchildren working on the case finally. When we got that signed up, and we had to, it was so much money that we had to get the Attorney General of the United States to sign off on the settlement. That was a great day. There was a lot of happiness around. But there have been a lot. And you know, some of the little cases you get just as much satisfaction out of as the big ones, maybe even more. Because sometimes when there's a lot of money involved, the clients already have a lot of money. So it doesn't have that much impact. But sometimes when there's a little money involved, it has a great impact.
Anything else before we end?
No.
You've been fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thanks.